So I want to welcome everyone to Pacvue's Fireside Chat. You can see the fireplace in the background. My name is Riku and I'm joined by my colleagues Matt and Zach. We're all in the managed services team, and today we're going to talk to you a little bit about what we've seen in 2020, especially around the pandemic, some insights there, and also what are we thinking for 2021 based off of what's going on now. So we'll jump straight into it. Want to first start off with asking the question to Matt. What have brands really learned from the pandemic this year?
Yeah, I think 2020 has been, needless to say, a pretty crazy year for everyone, especially in the retail industry and particularly for e-commerce channels and brands. So I think brands have really learned that you have to be agile and nimble. You really don't know what's kind of around the corner. That sounds kind of corny, but if 2020 has taught us anything, it's that you just have to be much more able to change in real time and change quickly. So I think one of the big buzzwords we use a lot is budget fluidity. Being able to move budgets between different platforms and different marketing tactics really quickly, making sure that you're staying ahead of the competition and always being first to market with new opportunities. I also think that we've learned a lot about inventory availability, potential inventory issues, supply chain runs, things like that. Just having some mitigation plans in place when you do inevitably run up against some sort of supply chain issues, whether that be your own supply chains, actual products themselves, or Amazon's FCs with capacity and things like that. So I think 2020 has taught us that there really is no 100% known in e-commerce. It's going to continue to change quickly and probably continue to accelerate. You just really have to be as agile as possible.
Okay, great. And then kind of shifting on to something similar, Zach, how should brands really think about their business next year? I know that there's been just a lot of noise this year, as Matt mentioned, but like what can we actually take away to next year, especially around perhaps speed to market or inventory or supply chain planning?
Yeah, I think 2020 was really a punch in the gut for everybody, like Matt mentioned. But agile brands and brands that were able to be flexible with budget and timing and kind of changing their strategy mid-year, they were able to see tremendous success in 2020. So in 2021, they need to continue that strategy and that flexibility. So first, I'd say they need to understand that the size of the prize is bigger. So we need to be more complex. Really have a full strategy. You can't just, mess around on the edges of search and display. You really need to go all in and build things out completely. Something that changed this year was we had a ton of new to e-com shoppers. Everyone loves new to brand, but new to e-com and new to brand are even better. And 70% of those people say that they're going to stay online into next year and beyond. So that's a really, really big opportunity to build lifelong relationships for people who were previously offline only. Next is make sure you're really following Amazon's CX changes and improvements. So this year, for example, during peak, they had an update to the search customer experience where there was a deals widget in search. So making sure that you're playing all the places that Amazon cares about, you got to do that to be successful or you're going to be left behind. And last thing I'll say here is that you need to make sure you diversify your spend activity. And that means having a full funnel DSP approach, so both prospecting and retargeting, as well as making sure that you have all sponsored ad types active, especially sponsor brand video, which is the newest, most exciting and best opportunity to engage with shoppers. And really to kind of prove out why that's so important, I'll just call out a specific data point from this Q4. We had some lower funnel DSP activity for one of our brands that's more of a kind of an attach item. We got over $4 ROAS on that in lower funnel DSP versus about $2 on paid search. So making sure that you have everything active and you're optimizing everything constantly presents a lot of really good opportunities.
So on a kind of similar note, 2020 has been an absolute year of the unknown, and you've done a lot of work on supply chains and kind of fulfillment in general. So do you have any tips on how brands or manufacturers think about the various fulfillment options to kind of mitigate some of that unknown risk?
Yeah, I mean, I think first off is we have to recognize Amazon is very good at ordering. That's kind of how they've been so successful. Everything logistics, they're king at. But it's incumbent on vendors to do our best to make sure that we are putting Amazon in the best place to succeed. So that means putting your promotions in ahead of time. That means working backwards from Prime Day or from Q4 to make sure that you have everything planned out. The more information Amazon has, the less likely that they're going to make mistakes in ordering. And normally, from our perspective, a mistake means they didn't order as much as we wanted. So to put them in the best place to succeed, we need to have coupons in, we need to have deals in way ahead of time. For big vendors or vendors that maybe had some significant issues this year that caused them to miss on their sales targets, you may want to look at having a backup dropship account, working with another provider, or if you are large enough to fulfill directly in a short period of time, that could be a really important thing to look into.
Okay, thanks. And for this year, there's obviously been winners and losers in terms of who's really kind of benefited from this structural shift in how shoppers are, searching for things, or how shoppers are just shopping. So Matt, as we've kind of seen the in-store traffic fall off, what can brands do with their advertising to help offset the lost revenue that's directly resulting from this lack of foot traffic?
It's a really, really good question. It's an important question. I think it's one that not every brand has had an easy time answering in 2020, just trying to deal with such rapid change. I will say I think that 2020 was the beginning of a trend we'll likely continue to see in 2021 and onwards, which is the emergence of new platforms, and especially last mile platforms, platforms like Instacart, DoorDash, things like that, where you can really get products as quickly as you want, same day in most cases. When brands don't have the ability to spend those marketing dollars at their large traditional brick and mortar channels, again, back to that budget fluidity piece, being able to move budget really quickly away from a brick and mortar channel that you may not be able to spend in. We've, for example, heard of a lot of brands moving their club, like Costco sampling budgets into e-com. That's a really quick and easy win. I do think that we've seen astronomical growth, hundreds of percents of growth year over year in the first half for platforms like Instacart. So I think that's going to continue to be more important for brands. Also think that platforms like Criteo with Target Network, Walmart paid advertising with the addition of brand amplifier in Q1 to the sponsored opportunities. I do think that we're just going to see digital advertising become much more democratic, away from especially the Facebook, Google duopoly, but moving away from just Amazon being the 800-pound gorilla in the room. They will definitely continue to be the biggest, retailer integrated paid search and advertising platform, probably for the foreseeable future. But I do think we're going to see really, really huge growth in some of these new emerging platforms.
Okay. Then lastly, moving on to the Fireside Chat lightning round. This is for both of you, but we've heard a lot of rumblings about certain brands thinking that 2020 is basically irrelevant in terms of establishing benchmarks. So question to both of you, do you agree with this? And if not, or if so, how do you really plan for 2021?
I'll go first. I do think that that's a kind of a yes or no answer. First, I do think brands should probably try and stay away from looking at their sales performance as a year-over-year comparison, which is really common for maybe that specific month. One good example is when you're going to be in March and April of 2021, your year-over-year comparison is going to look absolutely ridiculous just due to the COVID spike in March and April of 2020. So I would encourage brands to not really peg their budgets and their performance based on a true month-over-month, year-over-year comparison looking at 2021. But I don't think that 2020 was irrelevant. I think 2020 represented a really big shift, but it also basically sped up a lot of e-commerce development. The stat that we always hear is it was 5 months of e-commerce growth condensed, or 5 years of e-commerce growth condensed into 5 months in the first half of the year. So I do think that the new KPIs, we're seeing the new level of competition. I don't think it's going away. It may not have as crazy of peaks and valleys as we saw over the course of 2020, but I do think that with, like Zach mentioned, just this huge influx of net new customers shopping online for the first time, some of these KPIs, especially in the second half of 2020, as we finish out Q4, are going to be pretty much the norm going into the future.
Yeah, just to add on top of that, I think, if you're in an essential category, remove, kind of flatten out some of that demand from the panic buying in the March, April time frame. And if you're non-essential, you probably had a couple months where you were low inventory, perhaps low ad spend due to, inventory constraints. Remove that or flatten out that and look at things more holistically, kind of like Matt said, at the second half of the year, rather than directly trying to comp the previous, that same month, the prior year, because that's most likely not going to happen. There's always opportunities to learn from what we've done this year. So I would kind of just continue all of your learnings. It's not like a new calendar year changes everything. We're just going to have, a little bit more of the same, and kind of just keep learning, keep going and go from there. Build on the prior month, not looking back to the, same month the prior year.
Excellent. Well, thank you to the both of you. Thanks everyone for viewing this installment of the Pacvue Fireside Chats. Stay warm, stay dry, and happy holidays.